Hello, my name is Mark Rogers. I'm the director of the DaVinci Machines and Michelangelo exhibitions from Florence, Italy, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.
Welcome to Culture Vultures. I'm Linda Saul-Sena, and I have as my guest today Mark Rogers. He is the creator of an exhibit that is going to be fantastic when you visit it, DaVinci Machines Exhibition. Mark, welcome to the show. How are you?
First of all, buongiorno, buongiorno, buongiorno.
Oh, grazie.
It's a pleasure to be here. I could not be any happier to be here, number one, but also we could not be any happier to have brought our exhibition here to Tampa. We're so excited to be here, and we're looking forward to a great run here.
Well, tell us all about your show.
Well, actually, it's two in one, actually, and it's going to be something here that is so totally unique that probably nobody here has ever seen this before. We've had this DaVinci Machines exhibition that's been touring the United States for the last 4 years. And because most people know Da Vinci by the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper.
Right.
But few people know that he was one of the most prolific inventors of all time. He had over 44,000 drawings of all of his inventions, of which only 13,000 survived. And they say there are, what do you hear this, Linda? They say there are 2,500, there's 2,500 of Da Vinci's designs, inventions, and theories that we use every day in our modern day life.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, and he designed, I mean, it goes on, and the applications of his designs go on and on. He designed the original helicopter. He designed the original hand glider. He designed the original ball bearing. But anyway, what we did was, this has been touring the exhibit, it has been touring the United States for the last 4 years.
Yes.
And 3 years ago, the museum in Florence, they sent us another exhibition called Michelangelo, and the two greatest titans of the Italian Renaissance. And when they got over here, we actually did not have another booking for the DaVinci Machines exhibition right away. And I was talking to him one day on the phone in Italy, and I said, "What are your plans?" I said, "Why don't we bring these two incredible titans together?" Because most people don't know that they were contemporaries. They actually hated each other during the Italian Renaissance. They couldn't stand to be in the same room with each other during the Italian Renaissance. In fact, Michelangelo, he was 22 years the junior of Leonardo da Vinci, and we kind of know how kids are. During his entire life, Michelangelo, being 22 years the junior, would refer to Leonardo da Vinci, not as Leonardo, but as da Vinci. But you know what he called him?
No.
He called him the old man. And he actually said that he thought da Vinci was out of touch what was going on in Rome and Milan and Florence of the day. But what we did was, I said, we ought to combine these two incredible titans together. Because when you read their backstories and how they were brought up and how they viewed themselves in life and how they saw themselves in the universe, everything that they said, everything that Da Vinci did, everything that Michelangelo did applies to us today. And you know what they said to me? They said, "Mark, it's never been done before." I said, "What do you mean it's never been done before?" Nobody's compared and contrasted these two contemporaries of the Italian Renaissance. They go, "Mark, it's never been done." So we put together this Da Vinci and Michelangelo exhibition, and it was just unbelievable, wildly successful. But the neatest part about it was, Linda, we actually started to write the script. And we said, well, we have to tell people about this. We have to tell them how they were brought up and how they viewed themselves in life and how they saw themselves as artists and everything they said was that what they got through in their life is so inspiring. And we started to write this guided tour. Well, anyway, the guided tour from the docents became so popular, we actually made it and developed it into a performing arts theater production. In fact, we actually debuted it, you're not going to believe this, we actually debuted it 3 years ago at the Van Wezel here in
Really? That's fantastic.
And we had a wonderful time. It was wonderful. And since then, it's actually been touring the United States. We've been all over. We've been Ohio and Denver. And
who performs this?
Well, you know, they had to think of somebody to do it. And I actually do it. I'm the master of ceremonies, I guess, so to speak. And we talk about how, for instance, like a little tidbit from it. Michelangelo, one of the greatest sculptors, one of the greatest painters of all time, he was actually born into a very impoverished family, and he was the second of 5 sons. And his father wanted all of his 5 sons to all become merchants and go into the trading business because their family was so poor. But as you know, Michelangelo had much different ideas what he wanted to do with his life. And as a young man, he would spend his days walking the streets of Florence, constantly sketching. That used to upset his father greatly because he wasn't following his father's wishes when he came home. Can you imagine? His father used to beat him for that. Can you
Oh, my
imagine?
God.
But thank goodness he persevered. Thank goodness he did. And his father following allowed him to enroll into a sculpting school. And that's where our story begins. And the reason I bring that up is because they didn't have an easy go of it.
No.
DaVinci didn't have an easy go of it. He was actually born out of wedlock. DaVinci was to a servant of his father. Mm-hmm. His father was a notary in the law profession. His mother was one of his servants. As a result, DaVinci, his father being a notary and kind of in the law profession, he was not allowed to go into the family business. And you know what we say about that at the exhibit?
What?
We say, thank God. Thank goodness he wasn't allowed to go in the family business. And also, the young students that'll appreciate this, and that for the first 14 years of his life, they didn't even let him go to school. They let him roam free the first 14 years of his life. That's
pretty extraordinary that he developed all his capacity by himself.
And our theme at the exhibit is to discover the Da Vinci in you, because when you look at what they did and how they ran their life, the first 14 years of his life, you know what Da Vinci did?
No.
We know exactly what he did. You know what he did? Well, he updated his Facebook page every day.
No.
And he tweeted on his iPhone. No, of course he didn't do that. The first 14 years of his life, Da Vinci taught himself how to read. He taught himself how to write, and he taught himself how to paint.
Well, it seems to me the other thing he did was he learned to be an acute observer of nature, because it's his beautiful drawings of the natural world that are so extraordinary.
Absolutely, and that's what's out of the greatest senses, all the senses that we have, you know what he thought the greatest sense was?
What?
Sight. Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Well,
observation.
Many of us would agree.
Absolutely. That he could observe and see what was going on. Actually, this was one little tidbit about Da Vinci. He would roam up around the mountains, around Florence, Milan, when he was a young man, and he noticed up in the mountains there were seashells, which is kind of interesting for a young man to see that. And he used to think, wait a minute, how in the world did a seashell get up here into the mountains? Well, he actually, in his notes, he theorized that those mountains were once a seabed, and the Teutonic and the Earth had shifted at one time over the millions and millions of years, and actually became a mountain, and it was once a seabed. And you know what? They did not prove that theory until the early 50s. So he was literally 500 years ahead of his time.
Why did he write backward in his journals?
That's a great question. Plagiarism was rampant back in the 1500s, and he actually did it for 2 reasons. The one reason he did was in case somebody ran off with his codices, that they would have a very hard time figuring them out, that they would not know exactly how to figure it out. Also, he designed many gears and systems that we use today in our life. But he also invented and designed many war machines. And the interesting thing about it was, even though he designed war machines for his benefactors, Da Vinci hated war. He called war bestial madness, is what he called it. He said it was the worst thing when he would do it.
I love that. Bestial madness.
Bestial madness is what he called it.
Well, and the Renaissance in Italy was not a peaceful time. All the city-states were fighting against each other.
Oh yeah, it was one war. Each one of the dukes and lords and kings was trying to outdo the other ones with these machines of war and these machines of destruction.
Were Michelangelo and Da Vinci competitors for commissions?
Da Vinci was at odds with the Catholic Church his entire life. Michelangelo had the devotion and the religious fervor of a monk.
Really?
Yeah, he was. And Da Vinci was at constant odds with the Vatican's entire life, asking 10,000 questions. And they actually said that they wanted Da Vinci to paint the Sistine Chapel, but they were such at odds with each other
That's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they wanted him to paint the Sistine, but there was just so much conflict between him and the church. They actually asked Michelangelo to do it. But to answer your question directly, no, they were at 2 completely different levels on painting. even though Michelangelo was one of the greatest painters in the history of the world, he was still I mean, DaVinci he wasn't anywhere close to DaVinci. DaVinci was on an entire level, but a different level of this very detailed portrait painting. But Michelangelo, we know, just knocked it out of the park with his sculpting. I mean, he's still one of the greatest sculptors in the history of the world that ever lived. So they were two totally different opposites. I mean, he was a superior candidate. DaVinci was in his painting. Michelangelo was the superior one in sculpting.
It's so fascinating that two such extraordinarily gifted people lived at the same time, same country, and were so very different. So I want you to share with me and with the people watching this show what the experience is of coming to this exhibition.
Oh, thank you so much. I absolutely want it, because it's something like you have never really experienced before. We want you to come to the exhibition, and it's set up just like a museum. We have all these, we have over 80 pieces of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. We have the interactive machines of Leonardo da Vinci. We want you to come in. We have explanatory notes in front of everyone, just like you would in a normal museum experience. And you'd walk in, and we want you to turn and move and get a feel for the genius of these inventions and the applications. That's another interesting thing about Da Vinci, and I actually pointed this out to the artisans of Florence when we got the exhibition over here, that on all of Da Vinci's drawings and his mechanical designs, there is not one measurement on there. There's not one that says this should be 3.5 meters, or this would be 2.5 meters, or whatever. There's not one measure. And what he did was he designed it. And to tell you the genius of the man was, well, you can use it for any way you want. You can make it big, you can make it small, you can design it for however you wanted, because the applications of his inventions go on and on and on. So also we also have some movies and stuff set up around the exhibit that gives you a really a deep experience. But the neatest thing is, after you do that, we start on this, basically it's an hour and 15-minute, docent-guided multimedia tour of the Renaissance. We start with movies and animations and codices and slides, and we take you through the story of how they were brought up and how they viewed themselves in life and how they saw themselves in the universe. And you know what? They didn't have an easy go of it. I mean, there were people that liked Michelangelo. There are people that hated Michelangelo. There are people that loved Da Vinci, people that hated Da Vinci. And they actually, and you know what's changed over the last 550 years?
What?
Not a lot. We're still doing the same thing. The artists today that we have to fight, and we have to find our way through the maze to get our own ideas out and to get ourselves heard and our self-expression out. And that's really what it is. By the end of the tour, the performance we call it, by then we're talking about Paul McCartney. We're talking about Les Paul. We're talking about Van Cliburn. We're talking about how all these people, how they drew on themselves and how they viewed themselves and how they drew on this inspiration that they had. You know what we're missing today, and which I love to tell, and we'd love to talk about that at the exhibit, is the work ethic that Da Vinci and Michelangelo had was second to none. Da Vinci, it's so funny. Da Vinci. And they also were the polar, they hated each other, but they were also the polar opposites. Da Vinci was tall and handsome, gregarious. Everybody wanted to be associated with Da Vinci. And they said he even sang beautifully.
Really?
Yeah. Michelangelo was kind of small, kind of diminutive. He actually said during his entire life that he hated the way that he looked. Michelangelo had what we call today this angry artist syndrome. Mm-hmm. They said Michelangelo had a temper on him that he could unleash at any time, all the way from servants, all the way up into popes. Da Vinci during his entire life believed you should look impeccable. Did your 100% best every minute of every day. He even, you'll love this, named and numbered his clothing. And he would actually write named his clothing. And he would write little special notes about what each piece of special clothing meant to him. Michelangelo was the complete opposite. He was disheveled, slovenly. He actually slept in his clothes. And the reason they didn't understand later, the reason he slept in his clothes, because the next morning when he got up, he was so full of his passion to create, he didn't even take time to change his clothes. He wanted to wake up and immediately go to his sculpting and immediately go to his passion.
Well, they both were so prolific. I mean, they had an extraordinary commitment time-wise to their work. I don't think their home lives were much. I think it was really all about their work.
You know what, and you know what also they had today, and that's what I talk about, and we also even talk about that at the exhibit. In order to discover the Da Vinci in you, you know what we need today? We need quiet time.
Yes.
We've got to turn off these iPhones. We've got to, get away, because we're always constantly sending and constantly receiving, and there's no time. What they had, and what we don't have today, is they had time to dream and think and imagine and create and wonder.
But we could create that for ourselves.
We have to create that for ourselves. Absolutely. You pick up any book on the creative process, any book on the creative process. You know what the first thing they tell you to do is to find that space for yourself, either in your apartment or in your home or wherever it is, that you can go out and you can truly be yourself. And you can actually think and lay out your material and think. It's really funny. We actually had, with the Michelangelo exhibition, we had this recreation of Michelangelo's private desk, which was so cool. And they had, and you could actually sit in it. And it was actually an exact recreation of his desk. But the interesting thing about it was Michelangelo did not call his desk his desk. You know what he called it?
No.
He called it his contemplative room, where he would go and dream and think and imagine and come up with his ideas. And that's what we need today. We need that today.
Well, that and walking. But walking in Renaissance Florence would have been a pretty special place to be thinking about the world.
Well, it's a special place today. I mean, if you've been over to Florence, I'm sure you've been to Florence, I know.
I actually lived there for 5 months.
How cool is that?
I was an art history major, and it was fabulous. I will always credit it with opening my idea of what's possible in the world.
Oh, and what was your favorite thing? Is there anything?
My favorite thing, honestly, was walking, particularly in the area of the gathering spot, the piazza with the Signoria over here, and then there was an open palazzo over here with sculptures, and they didn't have the originals out anymore because they're too vulnerable.
Right.
But it was so beautiful, and I came back to Tampa, Florida, and thought we need public art and we need public squares, and the good news is we're beginning to get them.
Oh, absolutely, and when you think about it, the first thing I thought about when I was over there in Italy, and when you think that that Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci walked these streets, I mean, it's just amazing, and it's just so inspiring, and that's what we're trying to do downstairs. That's what we're trying to do here in Tampa, is to bring that. We want you to, when you walk in there, one of our first visitors to the exhibit said to us, "Oh my goodness, I think I'm stepping right back into Florence."
Isn't that marvelous?
Right.
Well, because it's here and let's say it's here at University Mall in Tampa Bay, people can have that experience. It sounds as if your exhibit is very immersive.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. And we want you to engage and also and come to terms and dream and think and see kind of how they thought and their ideas, and we're very simple. You look at our exhibit, the exhibits down there.
Were they?
Oh yeah, they were. Some of his designs were very simplistic. He had very complicated designs. He had very simple designs. But the application went on and on and on and on of these great machines that we use. I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning of the program, but they say there are 2,500. There's 22,500 of his designs, inventions, and theories that we use every day in our modern life.
Give me an example of one.
Well, he designed the worm screw, which we call the corkscrew mechanism, and we use it on every car differential. We use it on every car steering column. We use it on rack and pinion steerings. It keeps his exact. We have the exact model down there. It actually keeps every guitar in tune, every string. The same design that does our cars, that makes our car differentials work, is the same design that keeps our guitars and musical instruments in tune. Imagine he did the ball bearing. He's credited with the helicopter, the glider, the perpetual. Which is really cute. Da Vinci had 3 passions in his life, and you know what?
What?
We all need 3 passions in our life.
At least.
At least 3 passions in life. His first passion was painting. His second passion was flight. But Da Vinci wanted to unlock the secret to perpetual motion in his own lifetime. And he had small, medium, and large perpetual motion machines. There's one weight would drop, you replace by another weight, and another weight, and another weight, and we get going on. And he designed this one machine that we have there. They actually took these weights and he attached them to the spinning wheel where you can turn it, and it's really good because many of the exhibits are interactive where you can touch and you can turn them. He designed what we call today the flywheel. He designed the original flywheel, as we call it today, which is used in all of our General Motors engines and on trains and locomotives, and the application goes on and on and on and on.
It's so extraordinary. I think of engineers over in this camp, and I think of visual artists over here, but he was all of that. And his painting abilities are just so extraordinary.
People ask me all the time, they say, who do you like better? You like Michelangelo, you like DaVinci. You like DaVinci, you like Michelangelo. It goes on and on, it goes back and forth. But the only thing I've got to say with Leonardo is he was into everything. They found out now that we actually have down there in the exhibit, they actually couldn't even build it until 4 years ago, that he designed a water organ. He designed a water organ that he went to the fountains around Florence and Milan and Rome, and he would hear the water bouncing off the rocks. Well, it seemed to him to make a musical note. Well, he designed a water organ, and we have the exact one that they made. It was made by a think tank in Missouri that they actually donated it to us. And you would press down, and they would fill it up and and they weren't able to make that until just 4 years ago, which is amazing when you think about it.
Well, and you spoke of the seashells that he found that we were only able to identify in the 50s. You know, why they were at the top of mountains, because the land had shifted.
Right.
What an extraordinarily broad thinker. So it sort of makes sense that perhaps he had issues with the church, which was very doctrinaire at the time.
Yes. You know, he would absolutely. Because you're walking around asking 10,000 questions, it's kind of, because, how to, they tell you this happened, and they go, well, I mean, how did that happen? You know what I mean? And they go, how did that? And so he was a constant. He was kind of, and in fact, the last years of his life, he was actually asked to leave Italy. Leonardo da Vinci was actually forced out of Italy
because he went to France, I believe.
Right, and a lot of people think that the Mona Lisa still belongs in Italy. In fact, that the Mona Lisa has been stolen, I think two times in his life history, and the one gentleman that stole it wanted to bring it back to Italy. So so there's a huge kinship between obviously Leonardo da Vinci and Italy.
But one of the other things that Michelangelo did was architecture, in addition to sculpture and painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel.
Right. Yeah, it's such a great point. Even though Michelangelo's first passion in life was sculpting, there's no absolute doubt about it. His second passion was not painting. Michelangelo hated to paint. In fact, he called painting his penance in life.
Wow.
Whatever he had to do to get through the gates of heaven, that's why he painted. His second passion in life was architecture. He was a genius in architecture. His actual title at the Vatican was Director of Works at St. Peter's Basilica, was his actual title. And he was able to display his genius not only in building brand new from the ground up, but he could come into half-finished jobs, stalled projects, renovated jobs at the Vatican, bring them to their full and their complete conclusion. His greatest architectural achievement was, as we well know, was the Dome of St. Peter's, and it was actually completed 26 years after his death. He knew that he wasn't going to be. He knew he wasn't going to be around to see it completed. But he completed a small wood model of it, so they know exactly how to complete it when he died. Which is another great. I mean, there's so much to learn from these gentlemen. Michelangelo lived to be 88 years of age, which at that time was double the life expectancy. The actual life expectancy at the time of the Italian Renaissance was 42 to 45 on the long end. But he lived 3 weeks shy of his 89th birthday.
And wasn't he painting the Sistine Chapel toward the end of his life?
No, I think he was more in his 60s when he painted.
But I know he was miserable because it was so uncomfortable lying on your back, having paint drop on your face.
Well, that's one of the greatest. He actually said, that's actually a legend. Only very, very small parts of it he painted on his back. The Sistine Chapel.
Really?
Right. And he actually wrote it. But later on in Michelangelo's life, he became a prolific writer. In the last years of his life, and he wrote songs and sonnets and poems and love letters.
I didn't know that.
And he recounted all the major events that happened in his life. And he's actually said in his life that he designed his own scaffolding to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And he said for 4.5 years, as he stood up and painted the Sistine Chapel, he said his back was bent like an archer's bow as he painted the ceiling. So actually, it's actually just kind of legend, because only very, very small parts of it he painted on his back.
But it still sounds very uncomfortable. Oh, I was going to ask you about this exhibit. So people you pay to come, but it's a nominal fee.
Yeah.
And you get to see both the exhibitions and the theater production.
Absolutely.
Which is at specific hours, I believe.
Exactly right. You come in, and most people that came by, when we had the exhibit before, they came by for the tour anyway. So they came in. So we open up on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We open up at noon. We open up an hour before the performance, the tour. And we want you to come in and interact, and there's plenty to do. We have a whole kids section where they can put together one of his footbridges and the thing, and you can color the Mona Lisa. So that's kind of fun. And then we let everybody know that the tour is going to start. And then like I said, we start with this movie called The Rise of the Renaissance. It kind of brings it like, how in the world did all this happen? How in the world did all this confluence of expression, of creativity, all seem to come together at one point in this world? We talk about that. And then we dive right into Da Vinci and Michelangelo. And we have and when you see some of Da Vinci's war machine, when he designed them, he left different pieces out of his designs. So in case somebody ran off with his war machines, they couldn't make them work without his personal consent.
Did the local government hire him to design these war machines? Because if he loved peace, why was he designing things like this?
Yes, he needed money. That's what they did. And that's the other little thing about it. You know what's happened over the last 550 years in that deal? Not much. We're still 550 years ago, they were still designing war machines to make money, kill people. You know what we're doing today? We're designing war machines to make money, kill people.
But do we have paintings and sculpture that are as wonderful as
We have got to get those. We need it. We need a renaissance. We really do. We need a renaissance today.
Actually, I think I've had the privilege of being on Culture Vultures for a while. There's so much creativity in our communities. It's a question of finding out about it, sharing it. There are creative young people, there are creative older people. There's a lot going on in Tampa Bay. I'm very impressed by the variety of creative pursuits in our community.
Well, we've been here now in Tampa Bay now 3 weeks now, and we have fallen in love with Tampa Bay. So we love it. Check our website. Our website is discoverdavinci.com. Check out our times. Come on by, plan. You cannot possibly do this in under 2 hours. You have to at least plan 2 hours to come through the exhibit, a minimum. Come to the performance, come to the exhibition, and we want you to come by and truly immerse yourself into these two gentlemen. And you know what's going to happen?
What?
You're going to find a little bit of yourself there. You're going to find out that, hey, you know what these guys did? We can do. And we can do that today.
That is so, I really am eager to go and see all of this. I haven't been in Italy for quite some time, and to re-experience the excitement of their creativity would be a joy. And
to see all these paintings that we have licensed digital images of Da Vinci's paintings that are to his exact size. And for some individual, and we brought these all together in one spot. And for what you have to spend a month in Italy and France to find all these great pieces in one spot.
And frankly, right now, because these artists are so celebrated, there are mob scenes in the museums. I mean, to get close to any of them, first of all, you have to queue to get your tickets, to stand in line, and then there are dozens of people pressing up against them. And I know that as popular as your exhibit is, it won't be the mob scene it is over there.
Well, bring your camera too, because we want you to come in. You can take pictures throughout the exhibit. You can we have an actual licensed digital to the exact recreation of the Mona Lisa. We want you to take your picture with the Mona Lisa, and you'll have a great time.
And what a treat for our community. And I'm so glad you brought it here.
Well, we're excited to be here once again, and it has set up beautifully here in the University Mall. So we couldn't be any happier to be here, and we want everyone to possibly come by and see this that can make it.
And so, Mark, when we come to the exhibit, you'll be our guide?
I hope so. Yes, I'm there. You know what? I'm there every day. So you'll see me and come by and say hi.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here
Linda,
today.
thank you so much. It's been a blast.
It's a pleasure, and thank you all for watching Culture Vultures.